Hi, good evening, everybody. Hi there. Welcome to tonight's Candidate Forum. My name is Erica Crawford, and I'm the President and CEO of the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber here in Morro Bay is an independent nonprofit organization that serves as an advocate on behalf of our business community members. We promote a local economy of opportunity by catalyzing business growth, convening community leaders, and championing a strong community here. We are proud to be co-sponsoring tonight's forum with the SLO chapter of the League of Women Voters, and we thank the candidates in this special municipal election to be held on June 7th for participating in the forum and for completing candidate questionnaires that are available on the Chamber's website, which is morrochamber.org. Choosing the right candidate for you is a personal decision. We hope that the information shared by the candidates tonight in their own words will help you who are watching right here in the audience or from home to make the best decision for you in the coming election. With that, thank you again for attending. Thank you to AGP for broadcasting the event, and I'm going to turn it over to Shelley Higginbotham, who is our moderator from the League. Thank you.
Remember to turn this on. Thank you, Erica. Is this working? Been a long time. Okay. Good evening, and thank you on behalf of the League of Women Voters. We always look forward to being able to facilitate good governance, and we think candidate forums are an example of good governance. I wanted to quickly go over the format for tonight's forum. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement, and we'll start with Mr. Costanzo and then go to Ms. Ford, and then the closing statement will go in reverse order. We had questions that were submitted in advance to the chamber, and we have those questions, but we will also be taking questions from the audience. So if you have a question and you haven't turned in a card, just raise your hand, and we have some runners out there that will assist you. And we'll do our very best to get as many questions as we can. The candidates have 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and then we're going to give them a minute to redirect, to rebut, or if they have more information that they didn't get to share, it gives them an opportunity to finish that out, because some of these take much more than 1.5 minutes. Tonight, helping our league, our timer is Nancy Johnson, and she will be holding up paddles for our candidates to prompt them when at 1 minute and 30 seconds. We have our sorters, Patty Dale and Marlis McPherson, and our question runners are Betsy Cross and Kim Ramos. Logistics, we have Marilee Hyman, and behind the scenes, Valerie Stenson. So I would like to introduce our two candidates, James Costanzo and Jen Ford, and thank you so much for participating. So with that, Mr. Costanzo, you'll start first with your opening statement.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the Chamber, doing a great job, all the work they've done to get this going, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, man, what a great organization and great help to the community as well. My name's James Costanzo. I'm a longtime resident here in Morro Bay. I was a truck driver for a long time. I started a business and was fortunate enough to have a house here in Morro Bay too. So, and I look forward to serving the community on the council. So thank you all for being here too. I'm glad to see everybody here, man. Morro Bay has always had good participation in politics here, and so thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I also want to thank everyone that came out tonight, and those of you who are watching on Channel 20. I think it's great that our chamber and a League of Women Voters have come together to host this evening, give us a chance to tell you a little bit more about myself and James, and I'm so glad that we have a more inclusive format, having it broadcasted. I think that was a great choice that ended up happening, so thank you. Really quickly, I'm your current council member. I was appointed after the passing of our late council member and good friend, Red Davis, in September of 2021. And I am running for my seat, to keep my seat through the term that ends at the end of 2024. I'm going to back up a little bit here. I think I'm getting a little too close. And just some background about myself. I'm a California native. I was born and raised in Bakersfield. My husband and I, we have 2 daughters, And we were getting frustrated because when we lived in Bakersfield, our children were on several asthma treatments every day, and we knew that we had to do whatever we could to get them out of the valley. And even though our friends and family all lived there, we knew we had to do what we had to do. And moving to the coast was the first amazing option that came along to get to fresh air. And so we jumped at the opportunity. And we had no idea when we found a home in Morro Bay that it would be our permanent place that we would call home. I used to visit here as a child. I always thought it was a great place to hang out, look at the marine life, the majestic rock. I didn't know that this could be a place where I could afford to live. So having the chance and to raise our family here has been such an amazing experience. Our community is why we're still here. Such an amazing community, was so welcoming and wonderful, and we never want to leave. And so we're so glad that we had the ability to raise our children here, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. So you'll answer the first question, and it's on the topic of community engagement. And I'm going to break this up into two pieces. So the first part is, what are the three most often heard issues from Morro Bay citizens during this council campaign?
The three most common issues since we have been campaigning that have come to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would say one is what is happening with the wharf and when is it going to finish? And am I supposed to give you my answer as well? Or?
I'm going to come back to circle
Okay.
back to that because
Okay.
it gets, we
Sure.
need to
Okay.
have
So
time.
sure. Okay. So that would be one. Another is what's happening with wind energy, because I'm on the BOEM interagency task force. So asking what's happening with that. And then I would say another one is our waterfront infrastructure and funding. I think that one's a hot topic. That one's asked just about every time I talk to our community. So those are the three probably top for me.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Costanzo.
Thank you for that question. What I've been hearing is community involvement. They don't feel like they're involved in what's going on in the community, and they would like to be more involved, more listened to, and pay attention to. That's one thing. And the other is I get a lot from the battery, what we're going to do with with the power plant and how that's going to go. So that's a big issue. And the WRF, and how is that going, and are we paying attention to that? And so those are the three big ones I've been hearing about.
Okay.
you.
I don't think we need that 1 minute to rebut because I'm going to circle back and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Costanzo. What are your specific action or policy responses to those three topics that you've heard from the citizens in Morro Bay?
Thank you. Well, the three topics and what I'm going to do is I want community engagement. I think the community already is, you can tell by the audience we have here, they're engaged and they want to be involved in some of the decisions that are made at the council. So I want to be more forthcoming with information, more transparent, and take questions from the community and talk to the staff about those questions. And then when I'm on the council, we have a meeting, I'll express those questions, and we can have answers from the staff, and we can explore those. So the more we know, the more informed we are, the better decisions that we can make.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Ford.
The way that can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So regarding community engagement, there were three most often heard issues. What is your specific action and policy response to those three issues?
Okay. As my opponent touched on, it's important to be educated on those issues, especially when you're a community leader. You need to do your homework. And that homework entails, sometimes it's 40 plus hours a week as your council member. Sometimes it's even more than that. So it's important to do your homework. It's important, mentioned also the community piece or the communication piece. I also think it's really important that we're out amongst the community, engaged in many different organizations, such as our chamber. That's a great organization to be involved with because they've actually recently GAC, their Governmental Action Committee. I hope I got the acronym correct. But they've done a lot of deep diving on our local issues, including all 3 of those. And they have done an amazing job giving their recommendations and breaking those subjects apart, and I enjoyed reading them. And so I think between our advisory boards, our staff, our community input, the way that we communicate with our community is really important. It's changing. Recently, I asked, did I lose? Oh, okay, it sounds weird. Okay. Recently, I asked for an action in our community health goal as a council for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our staff is working hard along with us and our community to make sure that we are doing a better job being inclusive within our city of Morro Bay.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Now, Mr. Costanzo, would you like that minute to circle back and redirect or respond to any of the comments?
No, I think it's pretty evident. We both want transparency, and I think that's really important that we do that. I think we just have a different approach on how to get there. But I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Ms. Ford, any further comment?
No, I'm good.
Okay. This is like a whole new format because the chamber really wanted this to feel more like a conversation and for you to get to know the candidates. And sometimes when you're a minute and a half, it's just not enough time to answer or you have a response. So we really want to give the candidates that opportunity. So it feels a little choppy here. It's because this is whole new for us too.
Can I take my minute back?
You can. Yeah, we just roll with things.
Okay, I'm like, how strict are we on this? Okay. I just really quickly want to say that being a early childhood education teacher for over 10 years, communication is something that I would, I'm a long-winded talker, so I apologize. But communication is key. It's something that I would teach my young kids how to interact with others. And I think it's important that we're approachable as leaders. So if you're not approachable, then your community doesn't feel like they can actually come to you and tell you what they want. So, and what their needs are. So I think transparency, yes, but I also think being approachable is also important.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Costanzo, you're up first. Regarding the power plant property, what is your vision for the redevelopment of the Morro Bay power plant property, and how would you work towards that vision?
Well, it's a little bit early because we don't have all the plans and we don't know specifically what Vista's going to do. So it's hard to say. I'd like to see all the plans and review that and see how that's going to go. I don't know if the battery plant right there is going to be the best use of that property. I'd like to see. That's I don't think it's. I don't think the battery is coastal dependent. So we'll have to see what they propose and how that's going to go.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot going on in that. I mean, there's permitting and stuff that needs to happen first, but I think the community needs to be involved in that right from the beginning. We need to know exactly what's going on and where they're at on that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ford.
Okay, so if I'm understanding the question, you're asking how we feel about the proposed battery energy storage?
Actually, that question is, what is your vision for the redevelopment of the Morro Bay power plant property, and how would you work towards that vision?
Okay. I think it's important that we take into consideration what's currently allowed to be there and what's not allowed to be there. I think it's also important that, as Mr. Costanzo said, that we see more of the plans in front of us before we make a decision. But what I can tell you is that I'm a climate advocate, and as a mom and a local business owner and as a resident of Morro Bay, I think it's important that we prepare for our future. Climate action is important in that preparation, especially as a leader in your city. We know that it's getting warmer and our sea levels are rising, and we know that there's a possibility of Diablo still being decommissioned, and so we need to be prepared for that. And does that look like a battery? Maybe, if it's safe. If I've read the EIR and I've read the staff report and I have touched base with our service members, our fire chief. I've been in regular talks with him about this project since the day he started, actually, the very day he started as our chief. And just staying in communication with those people that are really going to be the ones that are reliable for our safety, and the experts, relying on our experts that know much more than I will ever know about these projects. But touching on what you said as well, it's important that we do get that community input. When we actually get a plan in place, set in front of us, and we get to review it, I really hope that our community comes out, and I hope that we can communicate that information to our community as well as best to our ability.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. I'm not against the battery technology. I think that's a good technology, and we need that. But I don't think that's the spot for that technology. And hopefully, I don't know if lithium's going to be that technology. I think it's going to evolve. So, and they're getting more advanced on batteries and how to use them. And it's a good thing. But we want to put it in the proper place, is what I think, and make the best use of the land that we have. Thank you.
Ms. Ford, anything else you wanted to add to this question?
I guess I would add that I heard a little bit of feedback on how much outreach there was on the stacks. And even though there was outreach, that the community was asking that we had even more. And so when a large project like this comes in front of us, I think it will be important. I learned a lot from the Stacks Forum. I don't know if anyone here got to see that or listen or participate in that, but I think that more opportunities like that are so important, not only to educate our community, but to give them the opportunity to give that feedback as well. But yeah, so whether or not I can't, as your sitting council member, just in case something like this comes across my plate that is related to this topic before the election, I can't give you whether I'm for something like that or not. But what I can tell you is I will do my best to be as educated and as inclusive in that decision making as possible.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Ford, you're up next, and this topic is housing. What will you do to ensure adequate housing stock is built and to require that such housing is affordable for our workforce? What obstacles are there to building more housing?
Great question. Housing, actually, I just read a report that is statewide that leaders, mayors, council members, city staff across the U.S. weighed in on what the biggest issue they feel their city is facing. And the top issue right now in California across the board, it's skyrocketed. It's like 50% above all the rest of the issues is housing. And it's no secret. Unfortunately, housing is our biggest issue here in California, and we know in Morro Bay it's not affordable. If you don't currently own a home, good luck. If you are a renter and you are forced out of your home, good luck. I personally am a renter. I think that gives me a diverse perspective on our council. I believe the majority of our council currently are homeowners. That's great. I'm glad that they are able to do that, but I currently am not. So that gives me that different perspective. As far as housing goes, I believe that right now, one of the reasons that we're having an issue with development is that our standards need to be better within our city. I know that our planning department is currently working on that. We just implemented a new digital planning format that is amazing. We no longer will have to use paper permitting processes. That will expedite that. But just clarifying those the process for our those that are wanting to develop here is very important. And I didn't get to finish, but that's okay.
Thank you. You'll have another minute. Mr. Costanzo, would you like me to repeat the question? Of course. What will you do to ensure adequate housing stock is built and to require that such housing is affordable for our workforce? What obstacles are there to building more housing?
Thank you. Thank you for repeating that. Housing is a big issue, not only here on the coast, but throughout the state. And I am a homeowner, and it took me a long time to afford to get a house. I mean, we go way back when $100,000 it was like still way out of reach. So it's always been a problem like that. You know what? There's not a lot of options we can do. So if we want affordable housing, how do you go about doing that? You can subsidize it. You know, you can have the state subsidize it. Of course, the city can't subsidize that. Or we can have the builders more subsidize that. So when we have a developer come in, they're required to provide some low-cost housing. And I think there's like 5 tiers. And so you can require them to do a low-income or a very low-income housing to provide that if they're going to build housing in the community. And I think we should do that and not take in lieu funds for that and just make that a requirement that they do that. That's one way we can do it. And then the other way is, we can find developers, and I think there might be some land that's appropriate for maybe apartments. That's one way to get lower income housing here that's more affordable, because as we know, the workforce, we need housing for the workforce so they don't have to commute. That's always been a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, do you have a response?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so workforce, I'm just going to continue on from there because that was actually where I was going next. So our workforce, our businesses here are struggling. A lot of our businesses are having to cut their hours. We have restaurants that aren't unable to do to-go orders anymore. We have hoteliers that are cleaning their own rooms. We are hurting for a workforce, and without housing, you have less workforce. Without, and even if they're living nearby, now there's gas price issues, and maybe they're finding work within their own hometown, and they're not commuting anymore. So we have a lot of problems when it comes to that. But as far as increasing housing, there are some opportunities. Not just annexing new land and getting new homes, but there's also properties here within our current borders that we can look at and entice developers to come and create something amazing and creative. Our new zoning ordinance is happening right now. And so I think that it's important that our community gives input on that. But there are some ideas as far as right now we have home sharing among senior citizens. We have ADUs that are easier to build right now, which are additional dwelling units on homes. We can have some more mixed use development here in Morro Bay where we have like retail on bottom, apartments on top. That actually brings our residents to our business areas.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I do. You know what? We need the housing, but we need to do it smartly because you can't just grow the city and be able to afford. That's not going to help us, So we do need to do infill, and we need to do it wisely. We don't want huge monolithic buildings and apartment buildings. So we need to do it smart, and we need to keep the character of Morro Bay. It's a priority.
My mic off. Okay, next question, Mr. Costanzo, you're up. And this is on business advocacy. How would you rate the current city council's support of local businesses and why? And what methods would you employ to support the health and growth of local business?
What's the first part of that question again, if you don't mind?
Of course. How would you rate the current city council's support of local businesses and why? And what methods would you employ to support the health and growth of local businesses?
Well, I've attended a lot of city council meetings, and I really don't have an answer of how they're supporting the businesses. I know the chamber's doing a fantastic job. They do a great job for the city, and that's part of the council. So, I can attribute that to the council having a great chamber of commerce. I was a business owner, and so I am pro-business. That is our tax base is our business. So I'm business friendly. And not only am I business friendly, but I'm business friendly for the local businesses. We don't want to see, these big multinational companies coming in and changing the character of Morro Bay. I think we need local businesses, and I think we need to be, we need to give our local businesses a leg up or the benefit, give them rather than a big multinational company. So I am businesses, and I support the business. I like to see them continue to grow.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I forgot to say in my intro that I'm a local business owner. And I've owned my local business here this is our 10th year, our 10-year anniversary. And so being involved with our business chamber since pretty much the beginning, when we first founded our business, I feel like I have the pulse on what's happening here, in our business industry here in Morro Bay. Having regular meetings with, not just, Erica Crawford, who is the Business Chamber's CEO and president, but also, other members, meeting with GAC, meeting with various groups that deal with our businesses. And really listening to what the needs are of our businesses is really important as a leader. So I know I've actually heard it mentioned, when you're on council, there's only 2 meetings a month. That's all you need to do. It's funny. There's so much more to that. And meeting with our local organizations that are doing the work, their boots are on the ground and they're doing it every day and they're grinding away. And also meeting with business owners and hearing what they have to say, go straight to the source. I hear cries basically from some of our business owners saying we need help, and I think being a listening ear and having those voices in the back of your mind playing when you may go into making decisions is very important. And if you haven't reached out to the community, you haven't done the outreach, you haven't done your homework, then you're not going to make a well-rounded decision when anything comes across your plate as a council member. So I think that is extremely important. And our current council, I feel, has done a great job, and I will talk later about that.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo, anything to add to that question?
No.
Okay. Ms. Ford.
I was just going to add that I feel as though our current council, our current city staff, our current chamber, I feel like there is a great working relationship that's really grown and strengthened over the last, since I've lived here, which has been over a decade. It has been a work in progress, and I see great hopeful things in our future for Morro Bay. Our economic growth is, I think that if we're going to have a chance after coming through a pandemic and other things that have come across, our other barriers that have come across, I think that if we're going to have a great chance, it's with who we have right now in our leadership.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Ford, you're up next. It's going to infrastructure. Besides streets and the WRF, what is the single most important infrastructure improvement that our city currently needs?
Okay, besides street and the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, I'm definitely going to go with harbor on this one. Our harbor infrastructure is crumbling. We have a lot of work to do along our harbor. It has kind of been, I don't want to say neglected, but in a way it's been neglected. And, we focused on streets. We passed a measure for that. We focused on our school. We passed a measure for that. We've passed measures for our services. And now we've got our harbor. And I think that there's creative ways to help fund the harbor. Currently, our council agreed to bring a pilot program along to our waterfront to help increase turnover rate for parking. Hopefully that we can raise revenues within our businesses, and then also, of course, make money off the meters as well. But just to kind of see how that goes. I mean, it's a true pilot. So if we feel like the community and the businesses and the tourists, if it just doesn't work, then we get rid of it. If it works, amazing, and that's extra income. There's some other ways we can go about that. There's the possibility of, professional property management for our leases along the waterfront. Our poor harbor department is so spread thin. We're short-staffed, and they have many, many jobs, and that's also property management for our leases on the waterfront. And so I think that if we could have that managed by a separate department, maybe we could actually evaluate and make sure that we're getting the most out of those waterfront properties. There's actually several ideas. I could probably go on for an hour, but I think that we also have some really creative citizens out there, people that are willing to do the work. There's currently something that's going to come across your ballot, and
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo. I'm happy to read the question.
Yeah, if you would, please.
Yeah,
Thanks.
not a problem. Besides streets and the WRF, what is the single most important infrastructure improvement that our city currently needs?
I'll have to agree with Ms. Ford that it is the Harbor Department. The Harbor Department and the Friends of the Harbor have done a fantastic job with what they have. They've really done, they've done all that they could do. So you have to give them kudos for that. One of the things, they have come across hard times. I mean, they lost the flow lease. That's hurt, and I think it has been neglected. I mean, we haven't been paying attention to that. I wanted to see the council take that up and foster some more ideas on how we could do that. And I think one idea that's been bantered around a little bit is getting a grant writer. I think a grant writer could help a lot. Get a full-time grant writer that can almost, they usually pay for themselves. And they could not only write grants, but look for grants that are currently out there. And I think that Harvard they can't do it. They can't do it all by themselves. So they need a little help, and I think we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add, Ms. Ford?
Yeah, I was just going to say there, we have a citizens initiative out there that is not brought forth by council. So there's a creative idea there. Of course, put it to the citizens, let you vote on something like that. If you want to raise your taxes for this particular, for the infrastructure for the harbor. But what I do want to talk about, though, is that my husband and I have been with the Friends of the Harbor Department since its inception, and work very closely and know very, very well how underfunded and our harbor is. And so seeing that on a regular basis, it's top of mind for me. And as you can read in my questionnaire that on the website, I do talk about a grant writer as well. I think it's important not just for the harbor, but for all of our departments. Our staff is strapped for time. We worked on a skeleton crew during the pandemic, and luckily we're in a good financial place. Out of nowhere, we had some amazing tourism that we weren't expecting at the tail end of that, the closure there in the pandemic, and so we actually got quite a bit of revenue, and we were able to hire back quite a bit of staff. But even though they're amazing at writing the grants themselves, they're also busy doing other things. So if we could have at least a part-time grant writer, I believe the return of investment it'd pay for itself and then some. So it's actually myself and a couple staff members. It's on our wish list.
Thank you. Anything else to add, Mr. Costanzo?
Yeah, on that grant idea too, it can be used for the city as well, for some city funding to get current funding. And that's one of the biggest things. If you talk to other cities, the biggest thing that they have is they call it's a big word, intergovernmental transfers. So it's how they move money around. So we should be in on that and getting money from the state. There's a lot of COVID money out there that I think we could go after, and I think we should. Why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Costanzo. Speaking of harbor parcel tax, the city is currently doing an organizational assessment of the harbor department. How would you ensure fiscal sustainability for the harbor department, and what is your position on the harbor parcel tax measure on the November ballot?
Well, I have mixed feelings on that. It's another property tax, and I don't know if it's evenly distributed. Everybody pays the same on the parcel, even if you have, a half parcel or something. So, I don't know. I'm glad it's going to the voters and let the voters decide. I think that's where it should be. And so I leave it up to the voters to do that. I think there's some other things that we could do, like I've mentioned before, to support the harbor. But we need the harbor. There's a lot we can do.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ford.
Could you repeat the question?
Of course. The city is currently doing an organizational assessment of the harbor department. How would you ensure fiscal sustainability for the harbor department, and what is your position on the harbor parcel tax measure on the November ballot?
Okay. I think that it's important that we, I think that let's just say, for example, Measure D, our funds at work on the waterfront. I think that, that it's been suggested by the chamber that we create a sub-fund that, and some, basically to kind of monitor and make sure that these funds are being used properly. I think that we need to track the revenues and expenses, and I think the same thing could be applied to, if this were to happen and it were to pass, that we would want to monitor closely and make sure that those funds are being used the way that they should be, and that our money is being wisely spent, because our tax money is important, and if you're going to be spending your taxes, your hard-earned dollars, we sure as heck want to make sure it's being used the best that it can be used. But I would say that the first part of your question was, how would we support the harbor, correct?
Ensure fiscal sustainability.
So yeah, I think that even if we pass this infrastructure bill or measure, that's not the answer to everything, because I have a feeling that our crumbling infrastructure is going to need much more money than that. That would just be a great boost. But I think that we have to, I mentioned better management of the leases, reevaluating those property values and those lease agreements, having proper management, and that's all that the entity does. There's just several ways that we could bring in more income. I mean, if the parking works, that's just revenue throughout the year. We could, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo, anything to add to that question?
Just as far as the parking is concerned, I'd like to see the study. They're doing a study on that, and I'd like to see how that's going to work. I don't know if it's going to provide any funds for the Harbor Department. The cost of running that, and usually they put that into, if there's other revenue, it goes into doing sidewalks and all that. So I'd have to see the study first to see the feasibility of the parking thing. That's not my preference to see parking down there. That's just my preference. But I'm open to seeing the study. If that would work, maybe we can implement that.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, right now, our funds they're being spread too thin. Our waterfront, tidelands, lease trusts, like that, all the money is basically set for our harbor department. They get a certain amount, and then they're having, every year, it seems like they have more and more that they have added to their list with even less staff. So, I don't know, I feel like I'm arguing this parcel tax, but I feel like I really think that it needs to be put to the people. But I do think that, boosts in a small amount a year wouldn't be harmful, to help with offsetting those costs. But again, reevaluating those lease agreements and that sort of thing, I think spending money wisely, all of that plays into making sure that we have a stronger financial situation happening with our harbor department and what happens there on the waterfront.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Ford, you're up next. Regarding development, do you believe there is NIMBYism in Morro Bay? And if so, how would you work towards resolving tensions in the community while achieving the adopted city goals?
I think that NIMBYism, not in my backyard, I think that can happen anywhere. It's common. I think as a community leader for many years, what I've learned is that education is key. So the more that you know about what's happening, the less fear there is and the less anger there is. Even if it's something you don't like, the more you know, the easier it is to talk and communicate to each other. So if there's a project that is proposed and you don't like it, or the council, as a council member, I don't like it, I think it's important that I know as much as I can about that project before I make that decision. So I think as a community, if there is an issue with not in my backyard on a project, I think it's important for the city to communicate to, or the developer, depending on what this project is, communicates to the community, and that the community communicates to the leaders. But I think education is key. The more we know, the better decisions we can make, and the more we can all, come to, I don't know that it's an agreement, but I think that there's a balance, right, that we can have with listening to our community, but also, there's certain regulations and things that we have to do as council, regulations and policy that we have to follow. So I think the more the community knows about that, the more we can work together.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo.
Yeah, thanks for that question, actually. You know what, this is where being transparent and asking the questions, and when you're on council, because what I hear out there is we want to keep the character of Morro Bay. We don't want to have big developments, so we want to keep the character. So when a big development comes, we need to know exactly so we don't want to know after the permits are already in. We want to know before that, so the community has time for input. And as a council member, I would take that those comments and the sentiment of the community, and that would go towards my decision, because it's not my agenda, it's the community. We want to preserve the integrity and keep Morro Bay as it is, so to speak.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Ford?
Yes. I would like to add that when those comments come to council, that as your current council member and as your hopefully future council member, I take all of what you write in, what you say at the podium, what you say to me in the grocery store, what you say to me on the sidewalk. I take all that into consideration when I go into a decision. And I think that it's important that, on a recent issue that came across, council kind of, just was like, well, we've heard the community, but we can't really give an opinion on it at this point. We can listen to you, but we can't really give you an opinion because we haven't had the chance to review or discuss it in a general meeting in public. So if you do feel frustrated that council members aren't giving you a, hey, I agree with you, or I don't agree with you, it's because we can't tell you that.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo, anything you'd like to add?
No,
It's
unless
a
you want to
NIMBY.
repeat that question again.
Sure, of course. It says, do you believe there's NIMBYism in Morro Bay? And if so, how would you work towards resolving tension in the community while achieving adopted city goals?
Yeah, see, that's the other thing with transparency. I think we need to, as the city staff does a great job, but I don't think that's communicated so well throughout the community. So we need to have better relationships between the community and the staff and the council, and I think the council can do that. The council can help the citizens know what the staff is proposing and why they're proposing that. If there's regulations and why these ordinances are put in place. I think that's important to have community input and back and forth.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Costanzo. This is regarding the legislative platform. The Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce has developed a legislative platform to advocate for issues that it believes are essential to a good business environment. Are any of those positions in particular do you support or oppose, and why?
Well, the Chamber has done a remarkable job. They have put out that, I've read that plan that they've put out, and I do agree with most of that. The high-density housing, or the high-density part, it's a little tough, but I think that's good. I think I can support that because I support the business, and they're in touch with the business community. So they've done a great job, and you can't. They've really done good. So I support the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Ms. Ford.
I'd say a standout statement that was made in the couple of documents that I read was when they talked about the zoning ordinance with regulations that are clear to applicants. I think I kind of touched on that in a past comment, but I think that when developers are looking at projects or like redeveloping a project, it's important that we have clear cut regulations. And as I said, it's getting better, but we can always do better. And I think the encouragement from our planning commission, which I used to be on, as well as encouragement from our council and our community for our planning department to do better. I believe that they are listening and they are doing better and they're continuing to work hard. So that really did stick out to me because as a planning commissioner in the past and as a current leader on your council, I do hear that quite a bit, that's a barrier that kind of hinders development here and can affect our economy. And so that's the biggest standout, I guess, at this point.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Costanzo?
No, not really. I can't think of anything
Okay.
right now.
Ms. Ford, anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say I'm impressed with what the GAC has done. They haven't been around for very long, and this is it's a great group of your neighbors that get together and work hard to provide feedback to the council on all the important hot topics that are hitting Morro Bay. And so I can't speak on behalf of other council members, but I can tell you that I read every word of all of those documents that they send because it's like gold. Very, very well thought out process that you could see before you. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, tourism. Morro Bay depends on tourism dollars to support our local economy and to provide critical city services. How would you balance the needs of tourists and the needs of residents in our town? And how would you translate your priorities in the city budgeting process? Okay,
so balancing tourism with local...
I'll read it one more
Yeah,
time.
thank you.
Timer, if you'll stop for 1 second. How would you balance the needs of tourists and the needs of residents in our town? And how would you translate your priorities in the city budgeting process?
That's one thing that I find very important about our council here and our city staff is there's always a juggling process. We're a tourist destination, so of course tourists and residents, there's always this, how do we approach the tourism or tourists with making our residents happy and making our residents happy with also enticing tourism. It's kind of a constant, like I said, it's a juggling act, knowing where to put those efforts into when it comes to a project. So I think right now what we're seeing is there's kind of this weird dissonance between, it's kind of an us and them, between our residents and our business community and our tourism. And I think communication is key as a council to that communication that if you want our streets paved, if we want local services like police and fire, that we need that tourism dollar. And so I think, again, back to education. Education's a great thing. If we could communicate to our residents how important it is, but how do we embrace tourism? I think that our chamber is really doing a great job at working really hard at bridging that gap. And so the second part, I'm trying to remember what that was.
How would you translate your priorities in the city budgeting process?
Yeah, so I think in the budgeting process, we have to just be really aware of keeping our infrastructure in. We have to not forget about our residents. When I first moved here, our streets were pretty ragged, and I know a lot of those tourism dollars to be continued.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Costanzo, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please, would you?
Okay, of course. Morro Bay depends on tourism dollars to support our local economy and to provide critical city services. How would you balance the needs of tourists and the needs of our residents in our town? And how would you translate to your priorities in the city budgeting process?
Okay, Morro Bay is a tourist destination, and why they come here? Because it's a great community. So I don't think it's a balance. I think we put our money in the infrastructure. If you go North Morro Bay, we haven't touched any of those roads; they're crumbling. So we need to do that. We need to keep that up, and the better our town looks, the better the tourists feel in town, and the more tourists will continue to come. The chamber does do a pretty good job, but we got to keep the town looking good. So I don't think it's a balance. I think if we keep the town, keep the feel of this town, that will attract tourists, and it's a great place to live. We want to keep the quality of life that we have, and that's what attracts tourists too. It's a small town. It's great. You can go down to the beach. We got the Rock. We got a lot of good businesses here to support. But on the other hand too, we could balance that out with if we could get other businesses and not rely solely on tourists. I know that's a big part, and we don't want to. In fact, I remember when this was a fishing community, and how great that was, and that was part of the charm of Morro Bay.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, anything to add?
Yes. So recently, our Public Works Advisory Board just went over, the PCI, basically the pavement management plan and the conditions of the roads. And I'm excited that we're going to see more attention happening, improvements to our roads again now that we've gone through a period of time where they kind of took a break on road repair, and so that will be returning. But I can tell you, when I first moved here, my very first interaction with local government was standing right there at the podium and talking to the Public Works Advisory Board and asking them to revisit the pavement management plan, because our streets were such in disrepair that my kids were building like Jenga out of the pieces of the street that had broken apart, and it was really dangerous. And so I asked them to revisit it, because North Morro Bay in my area wasn't even on it for the next 20 years. So it took some time, a lot of effort, a lot of letter writing, a lot of photos, a lot of community involvement, but we got our streets paved. It took a few years. So I'm very familiar with, residents versus, constant paving of our tourist area roads and that sort of thing. But I think that I think there has to be a delicate balance. We can't abandon our residents. We have to make sure that they're getting love, but also our tourists they're one of our biggest revenue generators.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. Anything else to add, Mr. Costanzo?
Yes, the roads have been an issue for many years. We've already had plans. We've already had studies. We know what the roads are, and there's always something. There's always delay, and we've had 2 years. We haven't done anything, and I've seen that proposal of the roads, and there's nothing in North Morro Bay. There's only, I think it was Main Street and like Pacific and some of these other streets that had already had it. And we haven't had paving. The last thing we did was like a chip seal. So we sealed some of the roads, and that was just to preserve them. So we've been more preserving than making the roads better. And they've deteriorated even more. I think we have engineering on that. So they're moving in the right direction. I just like to see it move a little faster. So if we had that 2-year break, we should have money set aside that was supposed to be spent in that, and then we can spend that. They're only, I think currently it's like 1.2 or 1.3 million for the current projects. So I think we can do better than that.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Costanzo, what does civility mean to you? And if elected, how would you demonstrate it for the community?
Civility is being respectful to other members, to the board, and to the staff. They work really hard. They're not paid all that much. That's one of the things. The pay has never been very good here on the coast. You know, we always used to blame it on the college because we had the college students come in and they would, you know, it would be their second job or anything. We always would kind of blame them for it. But I think we need to have civility. I think that's very important. Respect other person's opinion, and even if they disagree, we can agree to disagree.
Thank you. Ms. Ford.
I think civility starts with our leaders. I think that if we display, you know, we live by our actions, where our actions say a lot. And so I think that it starts with our leaders, but it also is important for our community as well, to interact in a civil way. One thing if I've taught my students in the past anything, and my own two daughters, it's that when you come at someone with anger and hate and their ears shut off and they don't hear anymore. And that was always my way of explaining it. And I'm like, you know, if you want to have a good conversation and actually listen to each other, it's important to come to each other in a civil manner so we can have a civil discussion. Sometimes that's difficult, but it takes a leader that can take, you know, I don't want to say take the punches. We don't want to take punches, but, you know, we can roll with the punches, but we can also get right back up and we keep going, because you have to kind of have a really tough, you got to be able to take it, because there's a lot of passion out there, and sometimes that passion comes across it comes across in anger. And I understand that sometimes that's normal. We're all humans. But I think at the end of the day, if we can do our best to be civil, it's how we can move on, and we can make Morro Bay a better place. So civility is really important to me, and not just in local government. I mean, everywhere. In business, I run a business. I have to, you know, have civil discourse with employees and you know, coworkers and that sort of thing. Civil discourse within your own home is important. It makes the world go around. It makes a much happier place, and I think we can all work together.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Costanzo?
Yeah, you know, I'd just like to say, you know, we're a community of around 10,000 people. This is a great community. It really is. People have come together. I know people are passionate, but I don't think there's really a lot of anger. When I walk the streets and door knock, people have been so nice, you know, and I so appreciate that. That's one of the things what I love about this town. You know, we have good people in this community, and a lot of smart people in this community as well.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, you know, you touched on it, because the community is, like I said, that's why we're still here, my family. But, you know, for a small town, we have a lot of big projects, and because these projects are so big in such a small town, it's easy to get involved. And I'm glad that it's easier to get involved. I came from a really big city that had very little involvement with their local government. And so when I moved here, I'm like, whoa, we've got a packed house at all these meetings. That's incredible. People care about what's happening in their town. That's amazing. So, you know, anytime you've got a lot of people that are passionate about a lot of things, I think that you're going to get everything from cheers to sadness to tears to anger to all the different things. But at the end of the day, I think we all have a lot of the same values and a lot of the same vision. We just have to find that commonality. And I think that comes with communication, and it comes with behavior, our behavior. So I think that's all important.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Ford, what role do you believe short-term vacation rentals should play in Morro Bay? And do we need to allow fewer short-term rentals to have more workforce housing?
That's a great question. Well, currently, right now, our new ordinance is that we are reducing the past council, well, not past, some of the current council. I wasn't on it, but they've reduced it from 250 down to 175. Of course, it doesn't happen right away. It's over time. So I'm curious to see, you know, how that goes once that is reduced. If our community, how they respond to that, if they like it better. But I also think it's important that we recently, as a council, agreed to fund having a part-time code enforcement person that can basically, make sure that our STRs are being, they're better regulated. Because I think that as long as our vacation rentals are operating properly, then hopefully the neighbors are happier. And if the neighbors are happier, then the people that are residing there on vacation are happier as well. But as far as, I'm trying to remember the rest of housing. Could it promote more housing? Probably. I don't think I think the idea of housing is so multifaceted that I think considering all angles is important. So would those additional homes from the 250 to the 175 make a difference in our workforce housing? Quite possibly. I don't think that's a horrible idea. But again, is that housing affordable for our workforce? Probably not. So I don't know. I don't know that I really have a straight up answer for that one.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Costanzo.
Yeah, that's a tough issue. They did pass some ordinance where they're paying more to support the enforcement on that. In fact, I live next to a vacation rental, and it's important to, as my situation, I know the owners, and we have a great relationship. So to me, it's been pretty good. But if you get a big house with a lot of bedrooms in it, and you have a lot of people, and we all know when a holiday comes around, the streets are impacted and everything, so it's a big impact. But as far as will it alleviate any housing needs that we have? No, because these houses are pretty big, and I'm sure that they're going to, the market value, they're not going to Section 8 a lot of houses, so I don't know if that would be any beneficial to that. But some of the ordinance on that will, and some, if we can keep up on that and keep better tabs on that and have a better relationship with those, I think that's a good thing.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just want to give you a real life situation as well. My family had to relocate. We had a flood in our house, and we had to relocate to a vacation rental home temporarily because, we had to leave our home. And the home, I'm not going to say where, but the neighbors weren't very happy when we moved in because they thought we were there on vacation. And we got a lot of stares. We got a lot of mad dogging, as I call it. And I thought that was kind of strange. I'm like, oh gosh, they must think we're visitors, and I wonder why they don't want us here. And we actually got to talk to the groundskeeper, and the groundskeeper's like, yeah, there's a lot of ragers here. There's a lot of big parties at this house, and the neighbors don't like it. And so they don't like when tourists come because you cause a ruckus in their neighborhood. And so I'm like, well, of course I would not be happy either. And it made total sense. And it was right before this actually came to council. So it was a great real life experience for my family to see what visitors might experience when they come to our town. If there's not a good relationship with the neighbors and the homeowners of the STR, and if there isn't monitoring and ordinance isn't being followed, then there's a problem. So, okay.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Costanzo?
No, I think we've pretty much covered that.
Okay. So, Mr. Costanzo, you're up next. Are you aware of the Rent Stabilization Ordinance 499 for mobile home residents that protects 750 residents? How do you feel about rent control?
I'm not familiar with that ordinance, so I don't know if I can speak to that, but I do, I know that community needs those housings, so we don't want to see anything, we wouldn't want to see that go away, so if it's in place. But I'm not familiar with that, so I don't want, I really can't speak to that, to tell you the truth.
Okay,
I don't know everything.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ford?
It's impossible to know everything. Yeah, I can tell you that my experience on the Estero Bay Alliance of Care, being a member on that, I've had the amazing opportunity to meet a resident who is one of our local advocates for this rent ordinance, and she works hard every day. If you aren't familiar with her, just attend or listen to a council meeting. You'll get to know her really well. She does amazing work here. Passion. And her passion is to make sure that the council remembers that there's an ordinance. She works hard to remind her residents that are in her park and other parks, she reminds them of their rights. And so what happens sometimes is that, I don't know if you're familiar at all with how mobile homes work, is that you might own your mobile home, but you pay for your space. And so what happens is the owners of those mobile home parks sometimes just raise the rent, and they raise it high, and they hope that the residents I don't want to speak for them, but maybe they're hoping that the residents don't know the rights. And so they just keep paying higher and higher rates. And it sometimes drives residents out. And these are our lower income, typically folks, or middle to lower income, and it's not okay. And so, and often new owners will come in and they will make big promises to these mobile home residents, and then what they do is they come in and then they just spike their rates, and it's devastating to these communities. And so it's important that we keep that regulated and that we stay on top of that, and we have amazing residents that bring that passion on a regular basis and keep us reminded.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Costanzo? Okay.
No. Oh, thanks.
Ms. Ford? Okay.
No.
Okay, Ms. Ford, you are up next. How will you address the growing homeless population in Morro Bay?
I'm already addressing it. As I mentioned, I'm on the EBAC committee, but also just a little transparency here. My brother is homeless. He's been homeless for over 15 years, so I have a very first-hand experience with that. So it's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I've lived within my own family. And I think no one here is exempt from either knowing someone who is homeless or is very close to being unhoused, if you haven't been yourself. And so I, as a leader, look at our unhoused and our multimillionaires, our billionaires, our middle incomers. We're all community. We're all human, and we all deserve a better life. I am currently working with our county directors that are working on this issue. I've been on several calls and several meetings. I've visited sites for safe housing and safe parking. I've worked closely with our city staff on this issue since day one when I was appointed. And I can tell you that there's an action plan for the unhoused that is being developed right now or revised for our county, because regionally we have to attack this issue as well. Morro Bay is unique, but if we don't do something as a region as well, we're kind of treading water. But what I can tell you is working with our EBAC and getting to know the people, again, that are doing the work. A good community leader gets to know the people that are exposed to this on a daily basis.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo.
Can you repeat that for me?
How will you address the growing homeless population in Morro Bay?
You know, that's a tough situation that we face throughout the state, and it's growing more and more. So there's not one answer, there's not one solution, because we've always had homeless. But what we can do is try to match the homeless with the organization that can help them specifically. But there's another component to that. It's mental health component. So you can't force somebody to get help, and so it's a tough situation. We all hate to see it. There's we can rely on those organizations to help those in need, and hopefully they'll accept that help, and we can help everybody. But that's a situation where it's always going to exist. I believe it's always going to exist. I don't think we can end homelessness, but that doesn't mean we don't stop trying.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Ms. Ford?
Yes. So bringing it back to grants, we have opportunities for writing grants here for Morro Bay. There was one actually for this center here to be a warming center, and I heard recently that a grant will be in the process of being written again for that opportunity. But I think it takes a relationship between our community, our various organizations. We actually have a great relationship with Los Osos. Really, it's one big happy family, I would say, when it comes to those who are working together to come up with solutions. Well, as you said, of course, we'll never completely solve this problem, because homelessness isn't just for mentally ill. It's not just for people that don't want to live within a community. It's not just for those who are dependent on drugs. There's so many factors that go into homelessness that one cure will not cure all. So I think it takes leaders that are willing to put in the work, roll up their sleeves, continue to work hard, and not just stand back and say, well, we'll figure it out one day, or we can just keep trying. No, somebody who's actually willing to do the work and to make those connections and to get on the phone and to go to the meetings, and even the meetings I'm not required to go to, I'm attending them. Because I want to know as much as I can so I can make the most well-educated decision to help our whole community.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Costanzo?
No, but it is a problem. It's a serious problem, and I think we need to continue to address that and work towards a solution.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo, are you agreeable to more community input concerning the development at Coleman Park to maintain a funky small-town feel and meet the needs of the local users? You must know who wrote this.
No, I like the funky, like the funky part. Yeah, absolutely. We need input on what happens at Coleman Park. That's a great park. I'm sorry to see that bathroom was demolished. I'd like to see it put back in the place that it was. We already have the infrastructure there for that. If we need a bathroom, but we have to maintain that. So we got to keep that in mind. So the more infrastructure, that means the more maintenance, and the more that the staff has to, or the departments have to deal with. So it's an added cost. So we can't keep doing that without addressing what it's going to take to maintain that facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ford.
I believe the question was, do I feel like there's more community input should be?
Are you agreeable to more community input concerning the development of Coleman Park to maintain a funky small-town feel and meet the needs of local users?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'd like to start with commending Pam Newman, who's with our city staff, and Greg Kwalik, who's our director for Public Works. They did a commendable job getting some community input before they put forth a grant that they wrote, an application, I should say, for that grant. I think that there was a little bit of misunderstanding with what that process was. A lot of people thought that was a permanent plan that went into place, and it wasn't. That was just a proposed plan that they took from community input from 2 separate meetings that took place both during the workday and then in the evening, to try to be as accessible to as many different people with different schedules, and also welcomed input via email and put it in lots of announcements all over the community. You're not, I know and understand that you're never going to get every single person's input, or not every single person's going to hear about it, and that's something that we can continue to work on as a city is to increase that communication. I even heard an idea of, can you post something there actually at the park that gives people like maybe a QR code or something, and they can go to that survey right then and there at that spot. These are all great community input ideas. But I believe that it will come back, and people can give input again when if we get the funding and we actually can move forward with this idea. There will be more welcomed input on that final project. But right now, it's just a proposed project without a final plan. So,
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Costanzo?
Yes, I would like to see more community input on that, and I think the city can do a better job of relaying that to the community on where it's going to be held and the facts that of the proposal, so we can see the full proposal before it's implemented, and that we can have input on that.
Okay, thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Ms. Ford?
The only thing I would add is if our community has creative ideas on how to recruit more input on that when it does come back, and we have an actual ability, we have the ability to create a final plan for that space. I welcome any input from our community on how to increase that awareness. One of the things I do ask when people come to me and they say, "Oh, I didn't hear about that," and I ask them, how do you get your information? Because that's really important. As a person who owns a digital marketing company, I'm always interested in hearing how you get your communication. So that I take that I take all of that input and have conversations with staff to try to help our city do better.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Ford, we're going to go to the wastewater treatment plant. What is your position on the future financing of the plant, and would you support another Prop 218 to finish it off, specifically the reclaimed water aspect?
Okay, so the question is if I would support a 218, and the first part of the question
Well, what
was,
is your position on the future financing for the plant, and would you support another 218 proposal to finance it significantly, specifically for the reclaimed water aspect?
I don't know that I have an answer for that today, but I can say that I know that our city is working hard to achieve grants to help offset that to a certain extent, and free money is always great. I don't have an answer for that tonight.
All right, thank you. Mr. Costanzo.
Sorry, if you would repeat
Okay,
that just so I'm
kind of
clear.
putting these together. So
Okay.
what is your position on the future financing for the water treatment plant? And do you support another 218 proposal to finance the finishing of the plant, specifically the reclaimed water system?
What a sore subject, and we all see it every day going up and down the streets. It's, we're, I think, 20 million over budget as it is. We were promised that it wasn't going to go over budget. I think we need to get a handle on that and pay more attention to where the funds are going and how it's being managed. So I think we can do a lot better job of that. And there's some other things that we could do. Boy, that's a sore subject. I could go on, but we can just do the best we can. Once again, we're a small community. This is the biggest project I think the community is really done. We haven't had a big project like that. It's 3.5 miles out of town. So, having said that, we knew what we were up against, and we need to pay more attention to that. And I think there's some other things that we can do, but I hope the council will bring it and have input from the community on some of the things that we can do and pay more attention to that.
Ms. Ford, anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to add that I think it's important that we finish this project in a timely manner because time is money. And so the more delays that we have, the bigger the cost. And so as a leader in this community, I think it's important that we get this done.
Mr. Costanzo, anything to add?
Yeah, we've had a lot of big delays. We don't even know the end cost of it, and we don't know when it's going to be finished either. We don't have an end date. I did talk to the Public Works Director, and he says that we do have an end date. They're counting on it. I can't remember exactly the date, but at the end of the year, I think most of it's going to be done, and but we have that the water injection. That's not going to be completed yet. So at least the plant can be tested, and hopefully we don't have any problems with any of the conveyance system on that. So there's still a lot up in the air, and we still need to still focus on that.
Okay. Mr. Costanzo, speaking of injection wells, where would you see the best place for the reclaimed water injection wells?
Well, we haven't tested it yet, so we need to do that pilot test. You know, that's way behind. We should have had that done. So we need to do the test, and we need to see the results of that test and see how that's going to work. So we're still in the testing phase on that. So where to put it, you know, we need more information on how that's going to work and how much water we can inject into those wells, and if it's going to do anything for the saltwater intrusion, or if we're going to, you know, how long that's going to take. So we can't just pump it in that well and take it back out. It's got to be in the ground for so long. So, you know, we don't have all the information to make any of those decisions yet. So we need to get that done so we can finalize that.
Thank you. Ms. Ford?
So the question is, if I have input on where the injection well should be?
Reclaimed water location, where do you think the injection wells should be located?
I'm going to trust the experts, and I'm not an expert in that field. So I trust the people that we have hired to do the job and our city staff. But I think it's important to do your homework, to do the reading, to listen to your community, to take a lot into consideration. But for me to say it should go in this specific place, I don't think that I'm equipped to give that exact location myself.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add, either of you? Mr. Costanzo?
Yes, I have to agree with Ms. Ford. That's what we pay the engineers for, you know, to see that. But I want to see those reports and see how feasible that's going to be. And we need the water too, so that's, you know, that's an important component.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Ford?
Yes, since you brought up water. I think it's to reclaim the water is the most exciting part of this entire project, and you know, the success of it is so important for our community, because if the projection is that it will give us 80% of our water supply, and that is so incredibly important if that is correct. But if the projections are correct, we could possibly sell our water to Los Osos if that, you know, Los Osos is in trouble. And so I don't think that's a horrible idea if that's something that we could do in the future, if it's feasible. I don't know. We'll see when it comes. But I think these are all important things to consider when it comes to reclaiming our water.
Thank you. Ms. Ford, do you have a plan to improve the intersection at Highway 41 and Main Street in North Morro Bay? And if so, what's the plan?
Do I have a plan? What I can tell you as a mom whose kids go to Morro Bay High School, that is a nightmare. And it's scary. When my kids are going through that intersection, it's like they're taking their lives into their hands. And you know, that's where our tourists come in and are unfamiliar with the fact that there's a high school right there, and we have teenage drivers, and it's a main, you know, where the 41 meets the highway, and it's incredibly dangerous, and something needs to happen. We agreed as council to move forward with the idea that we will contribute funds if SLOCOG will also hold funds for a future project. What that project will be, it's still to be determined between whether it'll be a light or a roundabout. I know there's mixed feelings on both sides for that project. I don't want to weigh in on what my idea is on that, because as your sitting council member, I never know when something on this matter might come across. So it would be irresponsible for me to weigh in on my opinion on what that project should be. But I can tell you that it needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed as quickly as we possibly can.
Hang on one second. I'm not sure you can be heard.
Okay.
Do we have a technical problem? Oh. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're totally
sorry
fine.
to interrupt. I'm seeing
That's
these.
okay. I think I said everything I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Costanza.
Sorry, I hate to ask you again, but we had that. I forget what the exact question was.
Do you have a plan to improve the intersection at Highway 41 and Main Street in North Morro Bay? And if so, what is the plan?
Well, I've been in the transportation business for quite a while, so I have plenty of opinions on, but I'm not an engineer. But that needs to be fixed. And Ms. Ford's right. You know, I have children that went to that high school too, and that's a bad intersection. What I'd like to see done, I'm not too, you know, I'm on the roundabouts, you know, they kind of work and they kind of don't. But what I'd like to see is the off-ramp and the on-ramp right there can be moved down a little bit. So that would alleviate some of that traffic. You know, we have two off-ramps and an on-ramp not too far from each other right there. So that's one idea that we can do. And we can move that other on-ramp further down. I don't think that would be too much of a hindrance on traffic. And you know, I like the traffic light idea, but I'd like to see a traffic study that they done on that, and see what the engineers have to say about that. But that is a problem. And you know, something else about that, that's where 41, where a lot of people come into town. So we want that to look good. We don't want to have that be a hindrance, you know, or backed up traffic as you're coming into the community.
Thank you. Follow up, anything you'd like to add, either of you? Well, that's the last question we have time for. We got through 17 questions tonight. Impressive. So that brings us to the closing statement. And Ms. Ford, you have a minute for your closing, and you're up first.
Okay. So I just want to thank all of you being here tonight. There we go, rookie mistake. I want to thank all of you being here tonight. As a mom, a small business owner, a former PTA president, a person who has been a community leader in various organizations within the county for years, also leader of many organizations in my past city, as well as a former planning commissioner, as well as your sitting appointed incumbent council member. I feel as though I have the history of leadership and the get it done attitude that has gotten me to this point. And I just hope that I come across as approachable, because I want you as a community to know that I'm here to hear you. I want to hear you. And the community is at the utmost importance to me. And the future of Morro Bay, I want there to be a future for my children and my children's children. And in order for that to happen, we have a lot of big projects for a little city. So I would love to have your vote in June.
Thank you. Mr. Costanzo.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. And I too, I love the city of Morro Bay. You know, I've been here quite a while, and I want to contribute to the city, to see it grow and be a better city, and to keep this small town feel that we have. And so I hope you will consider me to be one of the council members. Thank you all for coming. I thank the League of Women Voters. You did a great job. And thank the Chamber, Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce. You did excellent. Thank you very much.
Hey, you took my closing.
I take that back.
Yeah, it's all good. It's worth repeating. Thank you, both of you. Thank you for your time tonight, but mostly thank you for your willingness to serve the community. They're very lucky to have both of you. We appreciate it. Thank you to the Morro Bay Chamber, the League of Women Voters, volunteers, AGP. The tape of tonight's forum will run on Channel 20 and will be available on the League's website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. So let's give these candidates a round of applause.